Welcome back to another episode of Know Your Rights Camp podcast. My name is Alysha P, and I am a volunteer here at the Know Your Rights Camp. I've been a part of the camp since 2017, loving on our kids, loving on our community. Outside of the camp, I am a creative producer, a podcaster, and a mental wellness advocate. And to my right, I have Yesi Ortiz.
That's right. Yesi Ortiz from Los Angeles. I've been with the Know Your Rights Camp since 2018, so a couple years. I'm just honored to be a part and volunteer with this incredible family, incredible team of people who just work through and push through days with like little sleep to make some students just more informed, more empowered, and leaving here hopefully with the wealth of knowledge. On the side, I also have 19 years of radio experience in LA, been everywhere, I think, some TV as well. And I'm also founder of a coalition called Lima, which is Latinos in Media and Arts, where we try to elevate Latinos in executive positions and representation on TV and film and giving back to the community.
Come on, resume. Feeling good. And to my left, we have Dawkins, who's going to tell us who he is and why he's here today.
Absolutely. So again, it's such a pleasure to be here with you all today. By brief introduction, my name is Dawkins. I'm a financial advisor at the JP Morgan Private Bank. And what I focus on is professional athletes and entertainers and tech entrepreneurs. I didn't come from wealth and had a lot of things that I needed to learn as I was coming up in the industry. So what I do is 9 to 5. I'm working with, very wealthy individuals, but my true passion is taking that knowledge and educating our community so we can get that financial freedom just as much as they can. So
Amen. Very
happy to be here and looking forward to our conversation today.
Yes. We have like so much information to get from you, because I think this is I know Alysha and I, favorite topic here is money.
Oh my God.
Right.
Money. And something that we don't talk enough about is money.
Right.
And that's something that we all wanted to learn. One of the 10 points here with Know Your Rights is I have the right to be free, right? Mm-hmm. But what is I have the right to be financially free? What does that mean to you, Caleb?
Absolutely. I think a lot of people will say that money can't buy you happiness. Mm-hmm. And there's statistics that state that money can't buy you happiness because after you make a certain amount of income, the level of happiness actually goes down. But what I will say is that money can make things a lot easier. I mean,
it provides choices.
Exactly. And financial freedom, meaning if I want to go to Dubai next summer, then I want to be able to have the finances to do that. If there's something that happens in terms of I lose my job, I don't want to be forced in a job that I don't want to do because I have that emergency fund or that savings that's going to bridge me to the job that I want to do. So financial freedom to me is essentially being able to do what I want to do and not have my finances influence those choices, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. I think what's really important to talk about, now I told you I'm a mental wellness advocate. Yeah. I'm in therapy, and therapy is in every part of everything. But what I don't think people realize is the psychology surrounding money.
Oh, yes.
And your thought process in your mind around money. So let's get into our Black community, our community of color, the thought process and just the conversations we have ourselves or not about money. What is the psychology about it?
So, I mean, everybody has certain habits. The reason why I got into finances is because the way that I was raised wasn't necessarily the best upbringing. Now, I love my mom. She provided for me, but she wasn't educated on finances as much as some of my clients are, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And she had finances and emotion is very tied together.
Yes,
if I say things like debt or you don't have money, like you emotionally are affected by it. So it has a lot to do with mental health. Some people spend on just things that they don't need because it makes them feel comfortable, whereas others will go and eat things that they don't necessarily need to eat to make themselves feel comfortable. So in terms of your question, the thing that I got into finance is because our family had issues because we weren't making the necessarily important decisions. Mm-hmm. And it was a lot tied by how they reacted towards certain emotions. If mom and dad was having arguments and I'm going to leave and go get an apartment that I can't afford and treat myself. But it's like, where is this money going? What is the goal? Where are we headed? And how is this going to impact generational wealth years after this? But to answer your question, it's tied. It's tied directly, mental health and finances.
But like, let's rewind a second here. Like, at what age
Yeah.
do you start even trying to break the mindset? Because I know there's a lot of like 19, 20-year-olds right now who probably are watching this, listening to this,
Right.
who just got their first job,
Yeah.
right?
Their first debit
their
card.
first debit card, their first checking account, and some don't even know about a savings account. Do we go younger? Do we start talking about this conversation about financial wealth and freedom at a younger age? Like, what do you like?
Absolutely. So we have this saying in finance that it's not about timing the market, so timing your investment, but time in the market.
Ooh, that's
Okay.
So what that makes sense is that you want your money to be working for you as long as you can. And the reason why that's so important, to answer your question, is if I knew the things that I knew now, I would have been investing when I was 1 year old.
good.
You
Yeah,
know what I'm
right.
saying?
Before
Right.
birth, I would have been
Before-
investing before I got here.
Right.
Exactly. And that's because of this concept of like compounding, like things
Yeah.
compound
Oh,
over
that's
time and
good.
it grows. So the earlier that you can get your money invested into work for you, the more money that you're going to have in the long run. Now, what I will say is that it's easier said to done. Like, hey, start saving now. But we're so influenced by just all of these alternative, like social media, Instagram. Sometimes
Yes.
it's
We
really
were talking about that.
Sometimes
to
too much,
focus
yeah.
on ourselves because, you know, that bag just came up or those J's just came up.
Yes.
And you want to hold on to that whatever money you want to buy whatever it is.
Exactly. But if
Instead of double or tripling it.
Right. And if you can condition yourself to kind of make that sacrifice now, you could borrow 2, 3, 4 pairs of J's in the future because you invested that money early on. So it's, again, being very diligent and dedicated to whatever that plan is and always understanding what is the goal and what are you trying to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, oh, that's so. Even just that. If somebody told me that at 1 year old,
I think what you
or
just,
you know, as a kid,
what are your goals and what are you trying to achieve?
or just being comfortable with money.
Right.
I think that's the thing. We're not comfortable. We were never taught to be comfortable and understanding that spending money responsibly, i.e. investing, is okay. We're taught to hold on to it tight and don't let it go and keep it there to you so you can feel comfortable.
Right.
But what we don't understand, to make money, you gotta be able to not risk, but you have to. Scared money don't make no money.
Right.
Literally.
No, I'm right there with you.
Yeah. So, I mean, to talk, go into financial literacy, ooh, that's a conversation within itself. But financial literacy,
true.
what does that mean? And what are I don't want to say 3 steps, but what are 2 or 3 things that people should know about the importance of financial literacy?
Right. Believe it or not, I think the first thing, and this is talking to anybody, any type of wealth you have, however many zeros you have in your account, we always start the conversation. Number 1 is goals. If you don't know where you're going, how you going to get there? You know what I'm saying? So we need to figure out, what are we budgeting for? What are you saving for? Because for different goals, you're going to have different paths, right?
Right.
So that's the first step. Is what are you saving for? What do you want to achieve? Is that putting your son or daughter through college? Is that buying a house? Is that opening up a company? Because each goal is going to have a different strategy around it. The second thing is having a plan. Now, you have a goal, but if you don't put the goal on paper, then it's just a dream. You know what I'm saying? And you got to have that plan and that budget to make sure that you're going to be able to make that, so you have something to see your progress on. I said that I wanted to do this by then. How can I track my progress on it? And the way that you do that is having a budget and a plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The third thing is that you have to condition yourself to, again, I keep reiterating this, is that you need to focus on what you're doing and have tunnel vision and forget what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, that's real.
Because some people, like myself, I'm in the industry and I'll see people on Instagram and they'll have the new clothes or some jeans,
The
or
new jewelry, the new
jewelry.
bag.
Exactly.
the
And it
new
makes me
shoes.
want to go and do that. But again, when you go to that goal, I always tell people, how did that goal make you feel? You said you wanted to buy your mom
Yeah.
a new house, right? Be in that moment. How does buying your mom a new house make you feel? So when that bag comes up on your Instagram, you go back to that emotion, which is going to make you happy over time, the bag or the house. So I think those 3 things are how you get financial literacy. But again, it's just in anything that you do. Money is no different than going to the gym. If you,
Oh, God.
if you wanna
Discipline.
work out, you got to
Consistency.
eat right. You got to
Yeah.
be consistent. And that's the same thing in finance. Just be consistent and go into things that you understand and make it simple.
What about the resources that we can find? Or where can we get that guide and that support?
Absolutely. So I think there's a number of other banks or credit unions where you can actually walk in.
Oh my God, credit unions is another whole
yeah.
other conversation.
I know.
And get the necessary assistance that you need to ask questions. what I will say, and honestly, I didn't know what stocks versus bonds were, or
Man,
investing,
I'm
or
still
checking,
learning
or savings
today.
account. Yeah. So what I do is I literally use apps. I use YouTube. I use Google. What is a stock? How do I build wealth?
Literally just
Very
asking
simple
the
questions,
question.
and then go through those links. And again, it sounds very like elementary, but again, that's how I started.
Doesn't it feel like overwhelming though? Sometimes, like truthfully, it feels a little overwhelming, like getting the YouTubes and stuff. Like for me, it does, right? Because I myself am very like brand new to getting my financial wealth up,
Right.
And I get a little overwhelmed,
Right.
So like, is there a simpler way of kind of finding that support?
Yeah, so there's a number of organizations. I can't speak on other cities, but I could say here in Las Vegas, there's organizations like Nevada Partners where you could come in and they provide you those resources to break those things down. Like, you want to talk about stocks, but let me put it into like, do you buy Jordans? And then they kind of understand, like, yeah, I buy Jordans. Put it in things and meeting the person where they're at. So I would say look at some of your nonprofits, because financial literacy is not something that we just made up yesterday.
Right.
This is something that's reoccurring. And because there's such a large wealth gap between white families in America versus our black and brown families, this is something that banks and other financial institutions are really hitting home. So like, for example, the firm that I work at, we have a community branch manager. Her job is to go out and talk to different organizations to give them that basics of financial education. So go to your local branch or whatever you're doing, your banking, and you can sit down with somebody and their job is to educate you.
Yeah.
So
what books would you suggest that makes it easy? Because I think Rich Dad, Poor Dad is literally a book that makes it easy for you to understand. And it's kind of repetitive too, in a way that sticks with you.
Yeah.
So what kind of books similar to that would you suggest?
Be honest, for me, I'm more of a visual learner.
Yeah,
that's good
fine.
too. Yeah.
And videos. So I can't really describe. So I honestly will go online and read articles again, and just kind of outlining what that is. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I've heard is a great book to kind of get the process started. But what I do is I'll even dumb it down even more. Like, what is cash? And
that's good.
Okay.
That's
how I educated myself. Just because, and again, books might be great for everybody, but again, that's why I keep reiterating that you got to meet the person where they're at.
That's real.
So if you are a visual learner, then YouTube might be the thing. If you want to do like hearing, I listen to a lot of podcasts to kind of educate. If there's reading, then Rich Dad or Poor Dad. So it's really getting a better understanding of how are you going to take in the information and what's best for you. For me, books ain't doing it.
No, that's real. But see, but that's
there's also a board game, just so you know.
Right. No, I do, but see, and I love that you say that and you're honest about it, because people think that you only can find the information in books, which I do think, a lot of information is hidden in books.
Absolutely.
I forget who says this line, but my friend of mine used to say this all the time. They hide the information to keep something along the lines of like, to keep you dumb, they hide all the information in between the pages or in between the books. And while that is true, that doesn't work for everybody. So I'm glad that you kept it real and you said, okay, books are not for me, but
I'm visual
Googling
learner.
What is cash, what is a stock is just as important, and it will teach you.
Right.
That's how you got to where you were.
Right.
Anything you can say to a college student to protect themselves from a very, what did we call it earlier, like a predatory kind of system in terms of, going to school, college, and having literally a 17, 18-year-old sign on a dotted line. I was one of those people.
Yeah.
I'm 35. I literally just learned something about a previous student loan that I had that I didn't even know was in collections and what I can do about that.
Right.
I learned that this year. But what can you say to someone 18 about to sign a dotted line? Yeah,
so student loans or debt, period. Credit cards, whatever you want to call it, is you want to make sure that you're understanding what you're signing up for, because although it might feel like that money is free, nothing in life is free.
Right.
So you want to be very conscious about what amount of money that you're going to take out and have them outline, like, when do I have to pay this back? How much am I going to have to pay this back? There's going to be interest that's going to be embedded in these student loans. So meaning that $1,000 that you took out is going to be a lot more
in 5
years.
Trust me, people.
Right.
It will.
And if you don't know what interest is, figure out the definition of interest.
What is interest?
Exactly. Interest is just the cost of $1. If I'm going to borrow $1 from you, how much are you going to charge me to borrow that $1? And that interest sometimes will accrue over time. For some student loans, it starts from when you take it out. There's others where they don't
wow.
start until when you graduate
Yeah.
or 6 months after. So with any debt, you want to make sure what you're signing up for. But when I say debt, when I'm talking to a lot of clients, debt is very emotional.
Yes.
And the reason why I bring it up is because sometimes when we talk about debt, we think about like it's a negative thing. But when I'm working with some of my wealthier clients, they don't think debt as negative because they think of debt as a resource and a tool.
Yeah.
So it's understanding, it's having our communities understand, if we could understand debt and how to use it to our advantage, then it actually could be a resource to be able to grow your wealth over time. And that's another thing that both Black and brown communities can get a better understanding. Because one of the hardest questions that I got asked when I was interviewing was like, why do wealthy people take loans? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, they got all the money in the world. Why do they need loans? And it's because they have their money doing something. So why use my money when I could use the bank's?
Exactly.
So if you can get a better habit of like making those payments on time, understanding what a credit score is,
debt to ratio,
that could do a lot of wonders, and that can really maximize what your wealth is. But again, it goes to being consistent, building that budget,
discipline,
saving and discipline. But all of these things are resources if you're educated and know how to utilize them.
One other thing that I think is important to talk about is capitalism and the system that we're trying to fight against. Talk about that.
Absolutely. So I had touched on like the wealth gap that we see in the United States. And the reason why there's such a large wealth gap stems from just slavery from back in the day, redlining, where, African Americans weren't able to live in certain neighborhoods. And why that's so powerful is because one thing that we can go on hours is about trust in the state. So that's that generational wealth that we're going into. So for example, I'll break it down and keep it very simple. When you own a home, right, you buy that home, and that home again is going to appreciate over time. But when you sell that home, you're going to have to pay taxes on it, right?
Right.
But what happens is that if that home passes down to the next generation, what you had to pay taxes on is going to be minimized because what you paid for it is actually going to get stepped up. So, for example, if you have a $100,000 home and it appreciates to $200,000, right, you're going to have to pay taxes on the difference of $100,000 and $200,000, right? This is just like an example. If you die and pass that home to the next generation, that home is now going to cost that $200,000. So if I wanted to sell, if my mom passed it to me and I needed to sell that home, I don't have to pay any taxes. That's just cash in my pocket. And that's why it's so, like, redlining is such an issue, because some of the largest assets on people's balance sheets is home ownership and real estate. But if we couldn't buy homes, then how will we be able to build generational wealth from jump? You know what I'm saying? So that's why it's very key to understand why there is such a wealth gap. And to even hit it home is that I could be making the same amount of money as my white counterpart, but like I'm one of the very few people that made it out. So my first paycheck when I got to JP Morgan didn't even go to me. I had a sister that had a baby, a younger sister that had a baby. I had my brother who was going through school. My mom was struggling. So what I had to do is I had to take that money and help people out. Whereas I had my white counterpart, he's sitting at
already
home.
good.
And
Check going straight into the bank
his
account.
wealth right there.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that we call the black tax. It's like, if you're the one that made it, all of the responsibilities that individuals have to deal with, and that's not something that you can get in the book, because that's harder to tell, like, yo, mom, like, I really love you and I want to take care of you. But if I keep handing money out, then how am I supposed to take care of myself?
Oh, that's, oh my God.
So it's like
we need more time.
Those things really impact.
Yes.
Like, and that's why, to your point, wealth is very emotional, and has to do with a lot of mental health. And that's not anything that you could put in an Excel calculator or a finance book, because that's just something that you have to experience.
And that's so good, because that is what is literally holding down the Black community, is the emotional ties we have to it. That it's not our fault that we're so emotional too.
Right.
So I'm glad we spoke about that. And it's just for me, it's just to think about how much money is hiding in plain sight for us that we can't even touch because of all of the oppression and systematic things that we have to constantly endure. So thank you for touching on that.
No problem.
I think we're gonna have to do this again.
Yeah.
Because there's just too much to talk about.
We can talk about credit cards. We can talk about your credit score.
Yeah, 15 minutes is a short time to kind of talk about finances. But again, I think you both said it best, is that just have the conversation. That's the first step that you can have. Ask the question. If you don't understand it, start there, and then your knowledge will build, over time. I didn't come from much wealth and had to learn this myself. So, but yeah, be more than happy to come back. Thank you both for having me.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm Yesi Ortiz.
I'm Alysha Pamphile.
I'm Caleb Dawkins.
And we know our rights.
If you like what you heard on today's episode of Know Your Rights Camp podcast, make sure to like, share, and subscribe.